Fire Radio.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Size Up by National Fire Radio, because what you do off the job matters. And it's interesting today as I'm looking at my guest who I'm about to introduce. He's wearing a t-shirt. I'm wearing a hoodie and a fisherman's skull cap right now, and it's currently snowing outside of my window. But he's not very far from where I am here on the East Coast. So I don't know if he's just like a warm temperatured person and I'm a cold temperatured person, or it's just the way it is. But Lee Throckmorton, welcome to the Size Up, man. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
How warm is it there in the Virginia Beach area?
Let's see. We're freezing for us. It's I think it was in the 30s or 40s. So we're this is Arctic. This is Arctic for us. But you know, true Virginia weather. It'll be 70 degrees in another 30 days, or you know, it bounces back and forth. So
yeah, but
just
that's the East Coast these days, man. We're like, even in Jersey, it's going to be 60 on Sunday and it's 22 and like flurrying out right now.
It'll be Christmas Day. We'll be in a polo shirt and khakis. No coat.
It's a few Christmases ago, I was wearing shorts. Like that's
well,
so weird.
It happens.
Like this is not what happens. Like it is now. So it's just the way life changes. But I mean, you didn't come on the podcast to talk about the weather, obviously. And you have a really cool story from what I can tell, you know, doing some research, and you and I have spoken on social media a bit for the past, I guess, couple of years, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're floating around in that fitness type industry.
Right.
But, you know, we talk a lot about what goes on off the job now. And I know you're retired from Norfolk Fire Rescue, correct?
Correct.
But let's go back even further. Like, how did you get to that spot? What was your kind of life like pre-job and getting to it? And we can kind of start there. I think it's a nice place to start the conversation. My buddy James Gearing, Behind the Shields podcast, he always starts with your family life and where were you born and things. I move it a little more advanced and like, what was your high school life like, and where you go to the job?
Well, let's see. I wasn't one of the individuals that had their path, you know, laid out for them, you know, since they were 5 years old. I've worked with a young man who is 18, and he just recently got into a fire academy nearby, and he wanted to be a firefighter since he was 3 years old. I didn't really have any path. I wasn't I want to be a doctor at 12 years of age, or I want to be a Navy SEAL. I didn't really have a good idea of what I wanted to do. But 30 years ago, I got involved in ocean rescue in a very, very high volume tourist area here in Virginia. And it started to kind of open the path for me a little bit about what I wanted to do. Hanging out on the beach is fun,
not a bad
but
gig, right? Like hanging out on the beach is not a bad gig.
I tell you what, I miss it. I haven't been out there since 2015, and there's not a warm day that goes by that I don't miss being out there. But there were two things that I noticed early on when I was there. It was, one was in the lifeguard space. It was the outcomes, whether they were positive or negative, had a lot to do with the physical abilities of the providers that were there. And I was noticing that if somebody, maybe they weren't as fast enough, they didn't have the aerobic capacity, they weren't strong enough, it could have a negative outcome on the situation they were in. Now, luckily, that was in the minority. That didn't happen very often, and we kind of threw a lot of people at an emergency when it came up. But you could see how we had a bigger ocean rescue service with a lot of density of lifeguards, but you could see how in an area that doesn't have that many, that speed, that aerobic capacity and the stamina to get somebody back in from a rip current, if you didn't have those abilities, it could have a negative outcome. And
we see that too, but we see that to your point here, not just in the rescuer. But I know, I live close to the Jersey Shore, where we don't pump our gas here, we pump our fists.
Right.
And we have wicked rip currents that come through every summer. And what you see is in the strength and ability of the victim as well, is at least what I'm kind of paying attention to at this point. I have two young boys. They've done surf camp. They didn't do it this summer, but I've had them in surf camp. I think my oldest did 6 years of surf camp on the Jersey Shore in the summer, and my youngest did 4. And what they do with this surf camp is they break it up into half of their session is ocean skills, and the other half is actually surfing.
Right.
And to watch my boys' confidence just grow in the ocean, and then you hear these stories on the news of swimmers that are lost. Most are after hours when there aren't as many lifeguards or any lifeguards on duty. But that goes to the same thing I think you're speaking to, their abilities and their not just ocean skills, but their ability to swim and keep themselves alive.
Well, three-quarters of our planet is water and ocean. So you might want to have some skill in that area, or you could find yourself in trouble. But what that did was it kind of started to interest me as far as somebody's physical abilities and those outcomes. And then parallel to that was I was finding myself in the emergent, and I don't know exactly how to articulate it, because we talk about how it's not an emergency for the provider, but the emergency setting, the call for service. And I was finding myself comfortable and confident in that area. So it started to kind of clear a little bit of the brush away from the path as far as where I wanted to spend my time, because the I didn't have any context about the strength conditioning part of being a tactical athlete or a provider back in those days. Didn't have any education or context. But I did recognize that I was comfortable in that environment, and it intrigued me how those things correlated. So, you know, in college, we would I think I went to paramedic school while in concert with college as well, and it kind of got immersed in that, and then we could kind of start to see the path clearing a little bit more. But to be honest with you, most of us, the younger folks that were working for the lifeguard service, we were trying to figure out how we could just stay out there and keep working. And I'm sure some guys on the Jersey Shore
I
that
don't blame you.
are lifers. They are lifers for it. And what we found out is we were looking at our executive staff, and my running joke with the executive staff was, back in those days, we thought they were elderly, and they were most likely 37 years old, at most. And we were looking at them like, well, how do these guys get to stay out here for so long? And they were either school teachers or firefighters, and I'm sure that's mirrored up there in
Decent
Jersey as
amount.
well.
Yeah, decent amount.
Yeah, so it's usually the people that are lifers are in those two branches. So that's kind of what started to gravitate a handful of us to move our way to the fire service. I didn't know the first thing about fire suppression. I had never done it. I had some EMS, obviously, because I think I was down at the ocean front, working for probably 3 or 4 seasons before I ever got on with the fire department. But be honest with you, the motivation early on was, how do I keep working out here in the summertime? Just because we enjoyed the camaraderie. I enjoyed the office was great. So that's kind of how we ended up there. Hampton Roads, as you're aware, has quite a few big departments down here. And I and a buddy of mine, I think might have been 3 of us, ended up in Norfolk. And for those that don't know a lot about Norfolk, it's 50,000 calls for service annually. It's a 500 member department. We have 120 at any given time, and we run the gamut of all different types of occupancies, all different types of residents. So it's very, very diverse.
It's also grown, like most cities in America now. It's grown in your career for sure, from when you started to now, obviously.
Oh yeah, I don't think I couldn't tell you what the call volume was in 1996 or 7, but I'm sure it's grown quite a bit since then. And a lot of things have expanded. There's more. There's certainly more medic units in the city than there were when I started, probably by 4 or 5, out of, I think, 12 or 13 that they have at the current time. But yes, it's grown, and the calls for service have grown exponentially. But then, they I spent 26 years there and retired as a officer and on a ladder company in Midtown. Relatively busy ladder company in the grand scheme of things, but had a had an enjoyable career. Did spend some time in the fire marshal's office, so they did run us through the police academy, and they ran us through the field training program with the police department. So I had a little bit of time.
You were basically like the triple threat then, fire,
Yeah,
and like a
running and
quadruple
gunning,
threat, like quadruple threat.
running and gunning. Yeah, we. So and that's helped me in my current role, is that I have some experience doing the job, not just trying to train people for the job. So I've got some experience in a lot of different areas that helps me kind of see what the mindset and physical requirements are for most tactical athletes.
It's interesting too, because you mentioned that part about being younger and the ocean rescue business and things. And when I was that age and doing EMS, I just knew I had to be fit, right? I didn't really see it as the fit for the job. Being my smaller size, people would be like, "You're gonna lift me." And that was, back in the days of 2-man stretchers and
Right.
old, I still like the old school stair chair, but I'd much rather have tracks these days doing it for me. Right.
Right.
But that was like, all right, I got to be strong. But I didn't put the whole picture together, really, that my strength was making the outcome for the patient better. And I was also testing to get on the job, which I was like, I got to be strong and fast because that's what I have to be. The
Right.
fact that at your age, you were able to correlate that to the actual outcome of the rescue kind of speaks to how your mindset is. And I think it's gotten to you to where you are now with your business.
I've always been interested in that, understanding what the needs analysis is for, I don't know the first thing about cricket, but I could probably sit and have an interesting conversation with a coach for cricket of what the strength conditioning requirements are for that sport. And the term tactical athlete gets bandied about quite regular, and some people push back on it. I don't. I think that I think it's an accurate term. I think that first responders, military, there I think there is much athletes, and when you do a needs analysis for a firefighter, you can pair that up just like you would a needs analysis for a running back in football. I mean, you can lay it all out there in parallel. So I think athlete is a term, and athletes have to train. They have to be able to perform. And the big difference in the tactical space is that it can be life or death outcomes for yourself or who you're in charge of protecting. So I think that makes it incumbent upon people to make sure that they're in shape. But that seems to be an uphill battle, to keep swimming upstream, trying to keep everybody
It's
where they're
hard
supposed to
though,
be.
right?
I
Because
know.
when we talk about, I mean, again, I can unpack a whole bunch of that you just said in 8 million different
Hmm.
ways, right? And how people take terms and how people do things. But that's it. I think it's an uphill battle for everyone, not just people in the emergency services, because the fitness industry in and of itself is a humongous multi-gajillion-dollar industry, and we are all a part of it. And what it comes down to is it always comes down to your person, right? And you have people who, whether they are in the emergency services or not, they just don't want to put in any work. I'm not. I think we're on the same page when we say like I don't need people to be marathoners. I
Right.
just want you to be fit. I just want to be
Right.
healthy for yourself. Listen, I eat fast food occasionally. Like I
Right.
mean, like
You don't have to
very
be a monk. You don't have to be a monk.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, right. Like, yeah, we're
Right.
not, we're not the Shaolin monks, and like
Right.
have shaved my head in the past and things, but it's that everything in moderation. And so when you throw the term tactical athlete out there, people automatically go to, well, you have to be this disciplined about everything you do and every way you do it. And it has to be this, that, the other thing. And that's not necessarily it either.
I don't, but what I do think is valuable is that when you decide that you want to take on the mantle of being, police, fire, SWAT, there is something incumbent upon you to have to understand, at least understand what the requirements are and how to get to that point. What's the end goal, and make sure that you're training accordingly to achieve those goals. But if you don't, then either find somebody that can help you with that, or better yet, I think as a department in municipality, embed a subject matter expert within your city
Like,
to.
it's such a cool thing that you said that, right?
Yeah.
Because, when you and I came into this emergency services world, that was not even, I mean, it was heard of in a very few places. You could probably count them on two hands
Right.
years ago. Now, that embedding of some type of a subject matter expert or some form of something is at least becoming more commonplace, I feel like.
And I wouldn't even have a problem. In fact, I lean heavily on the fact that the group that I have at Cause and Groundworks, they've done the job as well, and I wouldn't have a problem with a department, putting an active duty firefighter
Yeah.
in that role if they are, if they've got the requisite education and practical experience to kind of go along with that. I don't think that you necessarily need to hire from the outside if you have somebody. And I mean, there's a lot of fire departments that have very, very educated and sophisticated coaches, whether they own their gym off duty, or they've came from the background as a sport coach before they got into the fire service, or police
Or the
department, or
player
wherever they
coach.
are.
You
Yeah.
see
Oh,
so many people in the emergency services field who come into it post being some form of an athlete, or
right.
they got their degree in kinesiology, or they got their degree in any type of physical activity, gym teacher, whatever you can say, kind of decided, not the career for me, but they
Right.
have all that knowledge and they can apply it so well to our career space that utilizing them is just like utilizing, if you hire someone who's been a paramedic for 20 years, well, obviously you want them doing your EMS equipment ordering, let's say.
Right.
Same theory.
Indeed. And I think that the biggest benefit that a municipality can give to their give to their members is just going to be give them as much information as you can. That was kind of how I tried to attack the situation in Norfolk. I recognized that we weren't going to get a whole lot of testing that was above and beyond what the 1582 or 1583 had us doing, and I knew that there wasn't a big push for there being punitive action for not being able to handle. And I struggle with whether that's even the best way to go anyway, because then you just open a whole nother can of worms there. But if you make fitness a priority, you give people as much appropriate information as possible, because it can be overwhelming. I mean, we can get on the Google machine right now, and I mean, we can find something, that just the
For
most
sure.
wild fitness information that and for the uninitiated, it's overwhelming. So having somebody that can kind of, bring that together, you provide equipment, you provide support, and you provide a subject matter expert. I think that that's probably the best way that you can get the most buy-in from your membership across the board. I think that that's a great place to start. And the money issue, I think, I sympathize with fire chiefs because it's a large pie, and
Sure.
there's a lot of people trying to get a slice of it for one thing or another, and some things have to kind of fall by the wayside, or some things are a priority. And but then again, I think that the manpower and keeping your manpower fit and healthy is should be at the top of the food chain. But right behind me is the hazmat guy, the tech rescue guy, the hose guy. I get it. The poor chief has 6 meetings a day on somebody wanting
Money,
money. But
deployed, yeah.
yeah,
And
but you
it's part it's such a thing though, where it's like it's in our society, right? It's the insurance, the circle of insurance. It's the circle
right,
of, they will an insurance company will gladly pay for you to have some form of a surgery, but not pay for your physical therapy to help you prevent having a surgery,
right,
right?
right,
And that all comes into it. And I'm hoping, I don't have much time left on the job, and I don't think I'm going to see the change in my time on the job. I sure do hope that in my lifetime, I'm going to be able to see this change systemically with insurance providers, with the health and wellness business changing to allow for us to be healthier. Because that's really
right.
what it comes down to, right? Is keeping people healthy and happy.
And it is in keeping that, and it starts all the way from the beginning. It starts from y- having an educated athlete that is trained for the test to get the job, and then once they get the job, to be trained and ready for academy day one. And then once they get out of the academy, they're useful, and they're healthy through their career, and then they have a long and healthy retirement. And I think that should be the goal for any department to have. But you have to start way in the beginning. A lot of places play catch up towards the end, and then but I think if you start out even before they get to even the testing process, then I think that you're going to have a better tactical athlete as you move all the way through.
So you brought up the testing process. So let's go down that road a little bit. And as
Okay.
we kind of just jump around in things, but
Hmm.
you see the prepared candidate versus the unprepared candidate. And you see their success versus their not success. How many of the folks that are coming to you with Kaizen there that like either are starting at zero, or maybe they're already 50% of the way and you just get them across the line? That's question makes sense.
No, I understand what you're saying. I think it's 50-50. I think yeah, I put them in two. I put them in two buckets. And I use an analogy, and I've used this quite a few times. But I use an archery analogy. Is that that what we talked about before was going to be the bullseye in the middle of that target, and we talked about being um, doing passing whatever test it is, being useful in the academy, useful in your career, and a healthy retirement. And the two archers that line up for that shot are going to be there. There's going to be one that doesn't have any arrows in the quiver at all, and that's going to be the young person that maybe didn't grow up in the physical culture. They didn't have good role models. Maybe their parents weren't in the physical culture either, and it just wasn't a priority for them. But they've decided that they want to get into the fire service. But they then and the arrows to fire are strength, aerobic capacity, power, agility, coordination, all that stuff. They don't have any of those arrows. So um, you know, there I would look to provide them with those skills, even just to start. And then once they get that, then you have the other bucket is the athlete that has spent a lot of time firing at the wrong target. So how that looks is going to be we all know the lifting guy that is, I'll walk on the treadmill, and I'll do buys and tries. And listen, there's nothing wrong with that. I think you're still going to be more fit than 90% of the
Somebody doing
population
nothing
because
for sure. Yep.
you're paying attention to it. But when it comes time to load up 75 pounds and get on that stair mill for 3 minutes, and then now I'm talking about the CPAT. You get on that stair mill, and their heart rate hasn't been above 100 since the Nixon administration. They're going to be in big trouble, and that goes the other way too. You've got the young lady who likes to jog, and then she meets up with that 165-pound dummy that she has to drag at the end of the CPAT. And those two individuals are shooting at a target. They're shooting at a bullseye, but they're just shooting at the wrong bullseye. So what I like to do is I'd like to provide the arrows. If whatever arrows they don't have, I'm going to provide them. And then as we get closer to the target, I'm going to kind of vector in those arrows and make sure that they're pointing at the right target. And most people are in the second bucket. Most of the people that I deal with have some sort of they have some sort of physical culture behind their in their past. It's just a matter of kind of bringing them into making sure that they're firing at that target appropriately and not spending a lot of time thinking about more performance than aesthetics seems to be the case for a lot of it. I'm currently working with a handful of law enforcement officers that are going to the SWAT school, and those guys are, strong. Super strong guys, but their aerobic capacity needs to be a little more robust.
A little higher.
And so, yeah. And to be honest with you, I told them, we're not going to do a whole lot of lifting after day one when they're pulling 450 pounds off the floor at a 180-pound body weight. I'm thinking, I think you guys are good. So let's see if we can't make that aerobic system a little more robust. But for the most part, that's usually the bucket of people that I see are people that have some experience. They're not just, they're not coming off the couch. I think that's a rarity, that somebody that hasn't done anything and then all of a sudden they decide that they want to be in public safety. I don't see that so much, but I'm eager to help anybody. But
It's so interesting, that bullseye analogy. Like, you make my mind go when I hear something like that, in my fitness mind and my job mind and things. And it's such a good analogy for so many reasons, not just even getting on the job, right? But you have that, my bullseye is a healthy retirement. It really never ends. You know what I mean? It just keeps getting pushed back further and further. But I need to be shooting at that target with all those arrows and making sure it's still the right target, because it's so easy over your 30-25-30 year career, whatever it is, to not lose sight of the bullseye, because everybody knows what's at the end, but
right.
It's grabbing the wrong arrows, or not grabbing enough of the arrows, or stopping to grab the arrows.
Or you lose one of the arrows for whatever reason. It's like, I haven't done any. And I think it's more, in my experience, I see most of the people heavy on the lifting, and the endurance suffers a little bit. And I think that I'm excited now because it seems that the pendulum in tactical athletes is swinging more towards a strong endurance athlete model as opposed to a somewhat enduring strength model. And I think that's more beneficial, I think, for the athletes in the long run. And it's more interesting for me as a coach to coach somebody on their conditioning than it is just adding 5 pounds to their squat and deadlift every week. Yeah, that doesn't interest me nearly as much as getting somebody's bumping somebody's aerobic capacity and lactic threshold to the right, and still keeping them strong at the same time. That's a little more interesting.
Well, those technical terms you just use there, aerobic capacity and lactic threshold, not that they're new topics, but that's such an important thing. And we've learned so many new ways to go about increasing that. Some that even involve weights when it comes down to the functional fitness end of things and how you can increase that. And it's so important in our world because police, fire, EMS, lifeguard, military, your ability to work hard longer is always going to be the challenge because
Right.
it's not just, oh, I'm going to go and lift 750 pounds one time, or
Right.
I have to swim 200 meters one time today.
Right.
We don't have that as an option. You go to one of these calls and you are working. We had a 45-minute extrication the other day just because of how entrapped the victim was. That was
Right.
45 minutes for everyone on that scene to be physically engaged at 4:30 in the morning, mentally engaged at 4:30 in the morning, to all these different tasks. And that comes into that threshold right there.
Indeed. And I think you can go to any rehab area at a structure fire, and I don't think that anybody there that is tired because they encountered the inability to lift something. Like they didn't. Oh, I got to go to rehab because I couldn't pick up X, Y, or Z. It's usually there's a respiratory component to it and a muscular endurance component to it, and that wears down. And that's usually what drives us at the end of that first and second tank. We're just worn slam out from that, as opposed to, hey, I encountered an object that it
Yeah,
just it was just
it happens to all
it
of us, right?
exceeded it exceeded my ability to pick it up off the ground. It doesn't happen, and that goes for schools too. I don't think anybody has ever been kicked out of a fire academy for the inability to pick up something 3 times their body weight. I just don't think that that's a reality. But if there's if there's a muscular endurance component, you got to do a certain amount of push-ups, you got to do a certain amount of sit-ups, you've got to run a certain amount of meters in a certain amount of time. I think that if there is a physical side that somebody is going to either quit or fail, it's going to be in that arena. So now, here's what I will say too, though. I there is a requisite amount of strength that you're going to need in all of public safety. And I would get into a debate at times with colleagues, and it was funny. It was usually the colleagues that didn't really do anything physically that would have the debate with, but
I know a
they
few of
would.
those.
Yeah, and what they would worry about more, they were more worried about somebody being injured while training, but not think about the fact that that's not necessary. You're going to encounter that on the street. You're going to encounter the need to do that. So if somebody is deadlifting at the fire station, there's always going to be somebody that's, oh man, you're going to hurt your back,
Sure.
and then when you say, well, what am I supposed to do when we encounter the obese patient that we have to move from point A to point B? And they're like, well, there's gonna be 6 people there minimum, and we got 120 to pull from, and we just throw people at it. It's like, well, that's true until you get to that narrow hallway or the stairwell, and
Yep.
then it's
They're
down to
always in the
two.
bathroom. They're
It's
always in the
down.
bathroom.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Like, come on.
There's one person in between the toilet and the bathtub that's able to get in there to help. So you're there needs to be a requisite amount of strength. But I think that, what I think is a paradigm that needs to happen, if it's starting to shift that way, is that, again, to use those terms you talked about, the push the aerobic capacity and lactic threshold as far to the right on that graph as possible until it starts pulling you away from that requisite amount of strength. When you get to the point where you can't carry the person down the hallway, or you can't get them out from the toilet, get them between the toilet and the shower, then we need to start rethinking, okay, am I doing too much on the other side of the spectrum? We might need to maybe bump our strength up a little bit, and then downgrade the aerobic capacity and lack threshold stuff a little bit. But we need to have that middle
Yeah, that's
ground
the
is
middle
going to
right
be
there.
important.
It's
Right.
that
That's
old CrossFit level one Greg Glassman analogy of I don't need you to be a power lifter and I don't need you to be a marathon runner. I need you to
right.
come into the middle and be able to do both. Because I think what separates, we can use the term tactical athlete for this and whatever you're at is also when you are stressed physically, you still have to perform mentally.
Right.
And I think when I started training in that functional fitness style for me, that really made me realize like I need to be thinking about things while I'm doing these hard workouts because it's the same as at work. On bottle two, I need to be smarter than I was on bottle one and sharper because the
Right.
dangers have increased. The same as a law enforcement officer in a pursuit. The longer you're pursuing, the dangers have increased. You need that mental sharpness. And I think when you're working with those numbers and what you're saying, you're also helping folks with that as well.
Right. And again, it's like it's just a constant, it's the constant tweak of, where is that line? Where do we focus? Where do we focus the amount of strength versus the amount of the amount of aerobic capacity? And that's going to depend on the athlete as well. But it's that's where having a strength and conditioning coach embedded in your department is going to be extremely beneficial. And another thing, I talked about wanting to get the athletes early. If you can get them early and you can show them, I do my best to educate my athletes as much as possible. I just don't have them come in and if they're running slowly at a 70% heart rate because they haven't built that aerobic capacity up yet, I make sure that they know what we're doing. We're trying to build this base. We're trying to get, the adaptations for that capacity built up, and then we'll kind of move from there. I think that if you get a young person before they even get to the testing phase of of whatever municipality you're in, and before they get to the academy, I think you give them that education and they can carry smart training through them throughout their career. And you see the military doing that quite a bit. I mean, any special operations group in most branches they've gotten away from you show up on day one and they just beat you to death. They still do that, but you've had opportunity for 6 months to a year prior to that to go through, they educate you, they kind of bring you up. They give you at least some, a modicum of physical training before you get there. But, the public safety is always a little slower. I think they're a little
Getting better.
slower.
You see a lot
Yes.
of pre academies, though. I'm starting to see it popping up online. Like if you are going to, XYZ Fire Department Academy and you start in 2 months, you can come every weekend for this pre academy that's kind of giving
Yes.
you that little bit of a time. I know the New Jersey State Police does it because I
Yes.
know several troopers here, and they do that because again, listen, everyone's goal is to get you to that end line, to get you to
Right.
that bullseye at the end of your career. But they
Right.
have to give you the tools and the ability and prepare you for what's coming.
Right.
I know that there are some folks that in that New Jersey State Police pre stuff, they didn't make it through that. And
Right.
maybe they thought this was for them, and then they got to that and were like, "This is not for them." In the military, you don't really get that as an option
Right.
of saying, "This is not for me."
they they're going to find something else for you to do if
Yeah,
it
yeah,
doesn't
they'll
work
figure
out.
that one
Right.
out for you. But when you have these
Indeed.
careers, hey, this may not just may not be your cup of tea. You know what I mean? Like you can do something else.
And it's expensive. I mean, it's
Yeah,
expensive. It's expensive to get somebody through a hiring process and then have them, for whatever reason, not be able to complete the academy process, and then they're either, they're behind the eight ball on attrition from, they were counting on those individuals to take the place of the people that they've lost during that time frame. And you can't bring somebody off the street into week 12 of the fire academy. You just have to wait until the next one comes, and then
There
get
are,
those folks through. So
I don't know if you know this or not, or if it's happening near you, but I have heard, I mean, it's confirmed. I'm not going to say who or what department,
mhm.
but there are larger departments, even smaller departments that are legitimately keeping a B list because on day one of the academy, let's say they have an academy class of 50 people. On day one of the academy, they're not even dropping people. People are not showing up.
Yeah.
So they
No.
have gone through the entire hiring process, let's say, like through all that. And instead of at some point in that saying, like, this is not for me, they're not showing up on day one. And
Right.
literally, the academy cadre, it's someone's job to get on the phone and be like, hey, Lee, remember
Right.
the job we told you weren't going to have? Well, hey, can you come right now? Like, come right now.
Yeah.
Show up here today. You can miss today. Tomorrow can be your day one. To me, it
Well,
like, boggles my mind. But
that happened to me. I was the person they called, and it wasn't because of that. It was because in between the hiring process and the academy, somebody retired. So they
oh,
knew
you got
that
the
they
extra
were,
spot.
yeah, I got the extra spot. So
Listen,
I slid into home
I got
right under the wire.
I got a thank God the New Jersey Civil Service Commission couldn't get their SHIT together and had to
Mm.
extend the list to get to me on the list. And
There we go.
I'm myself and 9 other people. My department was able to do 2 more hiring groups off my list at the time because they were just kept extending our list.
Right.
And so I'm like, I was supposed to my day one in my department was my schedule for my physical for the next list, my agility test. So they
Right.
literally told us pack a gym bag in your car in case you walk in here and we're like, you're not hired. So that
Right.
mental prep alone was like, do I show up to the work job or do I go take the
That's
test?
that is stressful. That is stressful. Well, let me ask you this: how does your department currently handle the physical fitness side? If or
Not really.
we can talk in hypotheticals. I don't
No,
know.
you know,
That might not have been about. I might have set you up.
no, you didn't set me up. I've said this
Yeah.
before. I don't mind saying it.
Mm.
So we are allowed to work out on duty, which is a very good thing because there are still
Mm-hmm.
departments that are not.
Right.
We have equipment. Most of it we bring in ourselves. The city currently has a health and wellness person. He visits the firehouses every Thursday. And it's more of, he'll help you to the best that he can. There's no real hands on. It's
Right.
more providing education, providing answers. If you hey, should I be eating more carbs or less carbs? Should I be running more, lifting more? He's a very nice guy, but you only get to see him once a month.
Right.
So that's better than we were before we had him, right? Because now we have that. Um,
That's
and we
better
are,
than most.
and there we go. And we're better than the
Yeah.
people that don't,
Yeah.
right? And
Right.
he works for a few fire departments in New Jersey. So when you
Right.
meet a guy that he goes to, it's everybody knows him. I got to get him on the podcast. I told him he was going to come on, and this is like a fitness geek episode, so I can't do
Mm.
a fitness geek episode because at this point you and I have fitness geeked out enough, and
Oh yeah.
only the fitness geeks are still listening here. But and what we've done that I think is probably the best thing that I've seen is we started running our own fire academies, and even before we ran our own true fire academies, we were doing morning PT with our recruits. And that morning PT has gone on for probably the last 6 or 7 recruit classes. It's hard to keep track. I can't tell you that every one of them continued their PT journey when they got hired for sure,
Right.
but at least we gave them a really good foundation in the academy and to come on the job with. So we're moving forward. Progress is being made slowly, but it's being made. So it's a good thing.
Well, and again, getting back to what we were talking about earlier, I think that if you get these folks, and this is why I want to work with the people even before the people before they get the jobs. I want them when they're sponges, they're motivated.
Before they've been biased.
Yeah, and you can, and hopefully steer them in the best direction possible before they get to that, because when you get to the academy setting, the band you need that bandwidth you need the bandwidth to learn the new
Yeah.
skills that you're having. I had zero when I got into the fire academy. I had no idea. I had never been a volunteer firefighter. I was comfortable in the EMS side of the house, but I did not have any suppression um, uh, experience. So I needed that bandwidth to absorb what it took to handle that. And if you're treating the academies like a fitness camp, that's a lot of bandwidth. If
Yeah.
you're near death every day at the academy, you can't think when it comes time when it's time to think. And there's some dangerous evolutions in the fire academy. And if you if you've taken away all that bandwidth trying to breathe, I think that you're taken away from the safety, and you're taken away from the learning aspect of the academy. And that goes for I think that goes for any academy setting. I'd say that and I went on a rant a week or so ago that the academy setting is not a fitness camp. You should come there day one ready, and they should have to maintain your fitness. You have a high level of fitness when you get there. They maintain it, and you can spend all the rest of that time learning. And
Oh, I mean, that's it. I love that, right? And
yeah,
yeah, you could pick up some new fitness tips and things there, but you're really there to learn to be a firefighter, learn to be a paramedic, learn to be a law enforcement officer. Uh,
right,
I think though, then we can go to the next step too, because I think it's even harder when you walk into your station for the first day to your house and you have all of those other things to worry about, right? You have to worry about, oh my God, I'm going to go into a real fire now. It's not a
right,
controlled environment anymore. Oh my God, I have an officer and three other firefighters that I have to get to know. I have
right,
to impress, for lack of a better term, let's say. Oh my God, I'm in a patrol vehicle with a gun strapped to me and bad
right,
guys. The bad guys are real, right? That's not the time to be like, I have to learn about fitness here too. And
right,
it may not even be the time to be able to work out when you're on duty because you have so many other tasks and so many other in not that fitness is not, me, it's the most important thing ever. But you need to have that healthy dose of my days off. I'm fitnessing the crap out of myself because my days on, I'm doing my truck checks, I'm doing my equipment, I'm doing dishes, cleaning toilet,
right.
all these other things that are just as important when you're new.
And we, especially in the fire service, we all know how much performance is taken right off the top from without us sitting here and doing a needs analysis of the fire. I'm sure everybody listening and you and I both know in detail what's required. But if you're taking 20-30% of your physical abilities right off the top before you even set foot to go to work, if that ceiling isn't raised
Yeah.
as high as you can possibly get it to start off, you're not going to have the cognitive abilities that you should under those circumstances. And I think that's another benefit to the fitness side of it too. And the hot I'm sure we'd probably get into this at some point, but the hot button issue now with departments is going to be the mental health side of it.
Yeah.
And we, again, the military has gotten ahead of us on that, and where I think public safety is coming around, and I think the freest, the least expensive way to assist with public safety mental health is be in shape. That you use the physical culture to help raise that ceiling on your mental health as well. And it just so happens that it makes you better at your job. And we don't have to worry about the mental health side of it as much if people were really focusing on the physical side of things. I think that makes a big difference. And we're seeing how much trouble public safety is in with the mental health side of it, but we're still not pushing the physical side of it to kind of assist with that.
Yeah, it's these added benefits of fitness that I always talk about. Things that I didn't know about. When you were out there lifeguarding, you were just doing fitness to have
Right.
folks look at you while you're on the stand,
Fair enough.
and
Fair
oiled up
enough.
and tanny, right?
Fair enough.
I can't lie about that either. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
no
Yeah.
one can, right? We didn't even
Right.
know those things now. Now we could tell those kids, hey, listen, man, those are great benefits. You know what I mean? Like that benefit of looking good on that stand is great. But this is also going to make you better when you're 40, mentally and physically, if you keep doing it.
Right.
You said it really early on when you looked at the senior leadership, and you're like, those dudes are ancient, and they
I
were
know.
probably in their 40s. And
Right.
I say it now, and I'm the 20-year in 45-year-old captain holding the railing when I'm going down the stairs. You young guys
Indeed.
be me someday. Right now you're you want to be me, and look at all the things I do, and I'm still hurting. I still
Right.
creak and crack and have days where I have no motivation and all this. But at least I know that all that time I spent working out is helping me now. If I didn't spend that time, I don't know where I'd be.
And I mean, it's the same. Now that I'm retired, I never really paid any attention to we have a 457 account. It's like a deferred compensation
Yep.
account. They let you put money in. I don't know if they have that up there for you. Same 401k is, but I'm telling all the people that are behind me, I'm like, listen, I didn't really realize what I was doing with that money, what it meant, how important that was going to be. And then once you retire, you're like, oh, I see what all that's for. That's the same thing with your physical abilities. And when you hit 60 and 70, after the toll that public safety job can take on you, the more robust you are in the physical side, that's going to pay off, just like your robust portfolio is going to help you on the financial side as well. So you look at it the same thing. Nobody's really going to argue too much about saving money for retirement, but they'll fight tooth and nail about stopping, getting off the couch and doing
Doing
a
a
little
little bit of
work
workout.
sometimes.
And
Yeah,
the
yeah,
couch is
yeah.
nice, right? Everybody likes the couch. Like, but it doesn't mean you can't have the couch time and the gym time, right? Like,
Indeed.
and I think too, we're seeing, early on, it was like you have to do this, like you have to work out this way. And what we found in the fitness industry is like there's no 100% right way, like you had said, for everyone to be working out. You have to find what you like. If you like riding bikes, go ride bikes. If you like doing CrossFit, do CrossFit. If you like martial arts, do martial arts. You're doing something, and that something is always better than nothing. If you have a specific goal in mind, then that's a different story, right? And how you have to train for that goal. And there are some things, I think being a law enforcement officer, training in jujitsu needs to happen. That should be 100%. You have to do that. Whereas on the fire side, we're not really grappling with folks ever.
Right.
Occasionally, very occasionally, you may end up in a bit of a scuffle. I had one myself that my boss likes to tell the story of, with a much larger man who happened to be a priest. Let's just say I won. It wasn't
Okay, well,
pretty,
that's
but let's
good.
just say I won. But he was way taller than I was, so
Yeah.
I had a defeat there, right? But it's not as important for us. Whereas that aerobic capacity being high, I feel like that's way more important for us than the ability to grapple with someone. So it's those specific things that really do matter, and how you're spending this time and your off time definitely correlates to how you're going to be operationally.
Yeah, and I will push back a little bit because like I said before, it's incumbent upon firefighters, police, military to train appropriately for the job. Now, I'm retired. I have a group of folks that I work out with every day at 3:15. I'd say that the ages are skewed, but we have a handful of people, myself included, north of 50. But when I'm programming for that group, I'm looking at what time domains we've done in the week, what movements have we done, and how to make it fun to where they want to come back. And we don't have a specific, other than just being varied,
Yeah.
and keeping the intensity across the board. We really don't have anything besides that to have to train for. But when, I have a couple of, a couple of police officers that work out with us, a bunch of firefighters. If they need to understand that there is some requirements for that job that you have to have, and whereas when those of us that don't have that, and we are not being called out for service, we can get away with a little less specific. We can kind of do what we want more, and that's something to kind of, and that's where embedding somebody in the department, they can kind of guide you, because as much as it would bug me when I would see the PT time spent with somebody walking around the fire station. That was always, that just bugged me. And
Like the pickleball in the fire station. That's fine.
well, I mean,
Pickleball's fun. It's not a
I,
sport for you to
I
play.
know, but it's
Fun. It's something fun to do.
I'm thinking about the requirements for the jump seat firefighter on the second story of a residential fire. At no point does walking for 30 minutes, the adaptation is in a month you're done. You have it, you're making no gain. So it gives that illusion of fitness. So that's, and again, that's not a judgment on that individual or individuals. It's just that
That
it's
can't be your consistent. What you're saying is that, and I agree 100% with you. That can't be, I walk 30 minutes every day and that's
right,
it. You,
right.
you can't be, you can't do that if this is what your life is. My father is 85 years old. He walks 10 minutes a day and I'm beyond happy for him.
Right.
Now there are days in the firehouse where I don't work out. There are days where I'm happy I can get into a pair of shorts and a t-shirt and run the stairs for 10 minutes with some push-ups where
Right.
hey, I got something in that day. It's that matter of how you're doing it and your consistency and your levels of things and your knowledge, put it all together and you're still going for that bullseye. It's like the
Right.
t-shirt you're wearing. I've been reading it the whole time and been waiting to say it, but train accordingly. That's what we have to do each and every day. It's such a great, simple term and mantra. Are you training accordingly in all
And
disciplines, not just fitness?
right. And that's our motto here. It's first decide what your goals are, solidify them, and then train accordingly. And if your goal is to be the best looking person in a pair of board shorts on the Jersey Shore, well, there's that's a different program than being able to drag a human being out of a structure fire when you arrive. So you just have to have to look at that. And if you're not intellectually curious enough to do that research on your own of what that requires, again, there's plenty of people that will assist you, and I'm sure there's plenty of people at the firehouse that are smart enough to do that as well. And again, some cities are lucky enough. The city that I live in, they've got a great program where they have very educated people that work very closely with the fire department, the police department, to kind of get them over on that. And they have the pre academy like you were referring to earlier. So they have that. So again, it's just training smart and training for the goals that are laid out before you.
Listen, buddy, it's 2023 and I squat a lot. So I'm out on the Jersey Shore wearing Ranger panties, and board shorts. You got to
That's
see all
good.
the squatting work that I'm putting in. And
That
I'm
is
showing it
good.
off. I'm showing off the higher ones, not the lower ones. Like,
There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
standing calf raises are for kids. When you're old like me and you're squatting, you show off these big bad boys up here in these tree trunks.
Indeed.
Something that we're getting towards our my hour time that I like to keep these at. We haven't really even mentioned your training company. We talked about it a little bit, but I love the name, and we talked about you're saying it's based from a Japanese word, so you're hoping you're pronouncing it right before it. But if I wrote it down right, it's continued groundwork is what it stands for, right?
Well, we'll put a finer point on that. So, Kaizen is a Japanese term for continual progress. So it's incremental progress, normally meant to be positive. So, again, the term that the analogy that I hear bandied about quite a bit is going to be a low trajectory at a distant horizon. I hear that, and I think that that's a great way to put it. So you're not we're not trying to take that magic pill and get from point A to point B in 10 days. We're looking at the long term. So it's that continual positive progress. And then groundworks, as you know, anybody that has any construction knowledge, which I don't, but and the architecture world, it's a foundation for it's work done in preparation for work to be done later. So that's why we want to be in touch with the folks that are in the initial phases, to where we can kind of build that groundwork early and layer it like a cake. Just keep continually progressing that individual through. So that's where the name comes from, and it's again, no magic pill is what we like to make sure everybody understands, that it's a process that you have to work through.
I love it because that's the truth, right? When you look at the fitness world, and like we said, you can jump on that Google machine. Those magic pills are everywhere,
Yes,
and
they are.
unfortunate. I think we all at some point believed this was going to be my magic pill. I've definitely bought some equipment or went down some rabbit holes, or purchased some things and got them, and we're like, this is not what I thought it was going
Right.
to be. But like you said, that continued progress, that incremental progress, I can't stop that.
Right.
No matter when I get in my own head and things like that, I have to keep doing something. And I think that's such a good thing to start people out on. And you're really doing good work there by starting people out on this. And it's really interesting to see where they're going to be in 20 years. And I know I plan on being here to see some of your folks and where they are in
Right.
20 years and what they're doing for our service, just like kind of we have done in our time here to advance it and get people healthier, and even that mental aspect of it. We kicked that a little bit into this one, and it's such a huge part that comes into play with all of this. No one told me I was going to be sleep deprived when I got hired.
Right. And I enjoy it. You talked about 20 years. I've got 4 or 5 people currently in a fire academy, and they're thriving. I'm currently working with some law enforcement officers that are going to SWAT school, and I suspect that they're gonna thrive as well. So it is neat for me to be able to kind of see that and have at least somewhat of a hands-on approach. The verdict's out whether they would have done well without me. I think a lot of these folks, I've been lucky in the people that I've been dealing with, their character, they've been a very, very high character. So I think they would have certainly gotten very close to the finish line on their own without me. But I was hoping maybe I've taken an arrow or two and vectored it just a little bit to get them to hit that bullseye, hopefully.
Such a perfect way to kind of wrap this up with that
Hmm.
arrow, man. It
Hmm.
is really a good analogy, and I've never heard anybody use it before. And I feel like we were able to tie it all together with that. And I'm thinking about my own like bundle of arrows on my back. Like, which one do I got to pull out next, or which one haven't I pulled out in a while? I think is more of what I'm like. Yeah, I got to pull that one out.
Today's the day. Today's the day.
Oh, I got so much other stuff going on today. Right? That's how it piles up, isn't it, man?
Indeed.
Lee, I appreciate it. Some people just dip here. So before we get into the size up 10, where can everybody find you online? I want to make sure they can look for you.
We have a presence on all social media. We have Facebook, Cause and Groundworks. We're Instagram is usually where we have the biggest presence. You can find us at causeandgroundworks.com, and that lays out the the products that we offer. We have some standalone programs that people can use if an individual is in good shape already and they just need something to kind of get them across the line. We have those sort of standalone programs. We have some programs to build you up. We have private training that if somebody, I have a couple people that I work with that are remote, and I work with them regularly about specifically what they need, and we kind of tweak their program to get them to where they want to go. And we also have a team that can do some consulting for departments if they are not
So
quite
inclined.
sure where to go.
So
Yeah,
inclined to go that
if
route.
they're
It's
so
getting there.
inclined,
Listen,
and
more people are doing it. Like for sure. I see what you're doing and it's great, right? Like
yeah,
that's it. You have this ability to help an entire department. Why not take it? And
it,
who knows how many people you're going to affect.
at least give them my experience and my education, and kind of let them know what my thoughts are, and if it resonates with the department, they want to kind of take it in that direction, even better.
Love it, man. I love it. You just gotta keep on keeping on, man. All right,
Hmm.
you ready? You ready for these 10 questions here?
I'm ready
All right, the size up 10. It's kind of like I gotta get the cards like David Letterman had and just throw them at
to
the
throw
screen.
them out there.
Maybe then somebody will watch. I don't know. Beach or mountains? Such an easy question.
Yeah, beach. A lot of
It's
a
pretty
lot of
much
lot
gotta
of
be
time,
beach,
lot of
right?
time spent on the beach. Now, don't get me wrong, I like the mountains too, but and living in Virginia,
Get both.
I'm 3 hours from either or, but yeah, I think I have to go with the beach. That's where my heart is.
Love it. Night out or night in?
An early night out, very early, like nursing home hours, like 4:30 dinner,
Old guys rule,
and then
bro. Old guys
yeah,
rule. I'm in. I like it.
and then in for the rest of the night. Home by 6:30.
I love an early night out. That's how my life
Yeah,
is too.
that's
Maybe
it.
I'm not at 6:30 yet. I'm like home by 9, please. Home by 9.
I've been asleep for an hour and a half by 9 o'clock.
A good book or a good movie.
Man, I have to go with books. I'm a little on the wonkish side, so I'm always trying to learn something new, or polish, or sharpen a sword of something that I've let go. So if I had to give up something, I'd give up movies way before I gave up books.
Oh man. See, I can change this question now to like which would you give up, books or movies? That
There
that
we go.
makes it
Yeah.
a little more complicated, I think. That may be a
Well,
change.
Hollywood isn't helping their case lately. I don't think movies aren't what they were in the '90s. I preach that all the time. We need to get back to the '90s movies, and I might have to change my mind.
That is for sure. I can say that. I'm glad to be raising my boys on the classics of the 80s and 90s.
That's
So
right.
they know a lot of good lines.
Indeed.
Cross country road trip. Who is your celebrity co-pilot?
Man, I'd have to say a 3,000 miles with McConaughey would be
Yeah, yeah.
crazy. I mean,
Been picked
between
before.
but I eh, his book, he's got a book, Green Lights, and I kind of was cautiously optimistic about reading it. And it was he is a great storyteller. I can imagine sitting in a car with him for 2 or 3 days, listening to stories, and getting into some trouble with him. I think that would be a fascinating road trip.
He's 100% on my list right there
Oh
for
yeah,
road trip people. And if one day he ever wants
indeed.
to come on the Size Up, he's an awesome podcast guest as well. I've heard him on so many podcasts. So maybe one day I can somehow figure out how to make that happen.
I think it can happen.
Anything is possible, right? You make your bed every day.
Well, I realize these are lightning round type questions.
They
No,
are.
but here's what I will say. I do know the speech from Admiral McCraven, I believe it is,
So,
that make your bed every day, and I understand what he's saying, and I agree with it.
but
But I have to replace making my bed with something else of discipline to do first thing in the morning, because man, I'm terrible. I'm terrible at making my bed. I mean, I used to have 16-year-olds that I had to tell them they had to be clean shaven and in uniform at 9 a.m. because the rest of the day was going to go well if they could get that done. So I understand the premise of the make your bed first thing, but no,
doesn't
no.
work.
If my wife,
This is honest.
if my wife could hear me now, she'd have something to say about that as well, because she agrees with McCraven.
I love it. Like, and it's funny because like this is supposed to be lightning round, right? But it's really not. And that's what the Size Up is all about, right? It's just
Right.
because what you do off the job matters and you have a reason to not do it. And I'm here to listen to your reasons, man. And so are the listeners. Some
Discipline in the morning is important. Just let the bed go.
you go with like I put my underwear on. That's my
There
discipline
we go.
in the
Yeah,
morning.
there we go. I dress appropriately.
$1 million right now. or go back to that 18-year-old you with a bit of a redo on life?
Oh man, I would. I often, I think the Greeks even said youth is wasted on the young.
Yes,
I would love to go back and do a do-over. Now, here's the thing is, I love all the people that I have known through my life, and I wouldn't want to give any of that up. I'd like to do a redo, but still not lose any of the loved ones that I've accrued over the year. But man, I go back and you kind of see as you get older where the holes in your game are. I'd love to plug some of those up at 18. That'd be great.
Oh, that's a great way to describe it too, because I'd definitely like
Hmm.
to go back and plug some of them holes. There were a few.
Oh yeah, there's a few holes. We all have them.
I got them from yesterday. What are you talking about? Just 18. Highways or back roads? What are you taking?
Wherever the Google Maps or Apple Maps takes me. I'm not. I'm
Ways, bro.
indifferent. I'm
Ways.
indifferent.
Ways. Use Ways.
Ways,
Ways is the way to
ways.
go.
All right.
Based off traffic together.
Anywhere they tell me to go. I'm quick to point A to point B.
I'm very happy you admit that. Like I use it
Hmm.
all the time. Like I
Oh
don't
yeah.
like I think about like I remember back in our youth, like, writing directions on your arm or your hand, like trying to drive somewhere or like that little piece of
Pip.
paper.
I don't know how we got anywhere.
Yeah, right.
I don't know how we got anywhere. I really don't. I'm fascinated at the fact that we were able to navigate anything back then.
And then if you got lost, you'd have to go back home and call the person to
Oh
figure out
man,
where you were
big.
really going.
I would have
It'd be
terrible,
done. It'd be done. Yeah.
terrible time.
Yes, sir. Terrible time to be alive. A bucket list place to visit.
Let's see, a bucket list place to visit. My mother has really instilled the fact that Switzerland is one of the most beautiful places
So
that
I've heard.
yeah, that I have that is around, and she's been trying to get us to go there with my parents, my wife and I, with them for quite a while. And it's eventually going to happen. Years ago I would have said Iceland, but I've been there twice in the last 5 years or so, and that's always a bucket list place, even though I've been there. And I saw your pictures, and I
For
was
sure.
it
It was a
it
bucket
took
list place, and
it
it's
it
still a bucket list
it
place. I
it
want to
took
go
it
back.
took me back. Yeah, so it's like any chance I can get back to heck, I'd live there, to be honest with you, if I could make that work. But
Yeah, it added to my
um
wife and I's retirement list of like, can we come here? How can we
it
come
is
to work? Do they have
life
physical assistance?
life changing.
Yes, sir. Go to Iceland soon. So I'm waiting for episode 50. My son is dying to come on the podcast, Finn, and we're gonna talk
Mhm.
a lot about Iceland, I think. So
Oh
that'll be a
man,
big Iceland episode coming
I'll
up.
I'll have to listen to that one.
Yeah. All right, two more questions. Football or football?
I grew up on the NFL, but I cut cable, and it was amazing to me how quickly the NFL kind of went to the wayside, after I cut cable.
Yeah,
So that should be a stark, that should be stark for them, that it was quick, and I couldn't tell you who does what nowadays. But what I'm getting at is when the World Cup came last year, I went to a nice sports bar, watched a lot of World Cup, and I was so enthralled, and it was some of the most exciting
it's amazing.
sports I've ever been a part of. I was so invested. I've watched every big football game from the 80s till now. I've seen every one of them, every big game that there ever was. Not one time did I have as much excitement as I had watching you
USA
know
England. That USA England game is just we
incredible. I mean, people just love to poop on soccer or poop on football, but let me tell you, it is an exciting sport, and the vibe when we watched it, there was football that came on after World Cup, and the vibe between the World Cup
oh
time
yeah.
and football time was night and day. So I know that's probably gonna upset a few folks if
No problem.
if
Listen, that USA,
they haven't turned it off, they're turning me off now.
we went to a watch party for USA England. I mean, there's, I don't know, 400 people in this room watching it on a big screen. There was a punk rock band at halftime. If I told my boys, like, and USA was playing really well, I'm like, if they get a goal right now, you never forget this moment in this room because it
Oh
is
yeah.
gonna go wild. I mean, we were all on the edge of our seats. I was like, you never will forget this moment in sports. And it wasn't even really for anything. It wasn't for the cup. It was just a goal. We just wanted a goal to tie type thing. And it was great. Like that, even to get to that, they were sad when we left, but I'm like, boys, you experienced it. Like it was amazing.
Yeah, sound like fun.
Yep, it was a good time right there. All right, last question. The best advice you could give to your younger self.
Let's see. Trust the process. Everything is a process, and you have to, we talked about solidifying goals, but once you solidify your goal, you need to focus on how you're going to get there and let that be where your focus is. And I'll give that to any young person, especially any young person that I'm coaching. You got to focus on that process. And if you're not focused on, some days are going to be boring, some days are going to be stuff that you don't like to do, and that goes for anything, any test you're going to take, any degree you're going to get, any goal that you have set for yourself. There's going to be a process, and you need to establish that process and trust it, and then just learn to love the process. And then next thing you know, hey, you're at the end goal that you were looking for.
I love it, man. I definitely love it. That is a great piece of advice to finish this one off with. So Lee Throckmorton, thank you so much for joining me today, man. This has been a long time coming that we've danced around kind of talking and doing something together. So I'm glad you reached out and you were able to come on and it's been a fun fitness geek conversation that I haven't had with someone in a while. So
it has. I can get geekier.
I
can get way geekier. This was a 2 out of 10 on the geek scale for me. So
scale.
yeah, I can get way geekier, but I appreciate you. I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much for coming on. And thank everyone for listening. Thank our sponsors. Thank you, National Fire Radio, for allowing the Size Up to still keep on going. We're right in this holiday season where, we all have busy lives. We all have things going on, but we just have to remember to be thinking about ourselves, thinking about those around us, and taking care of ourselves. So until next time, this has been Pip for the Size Up by National Fire Radio, because what you do off the job matters.
National Fire Radio.